Hello everybody, welcome back. It is episode 18 of The Peerless Gamer. I'm Brian Brake. Those of you who've been checking out our Reddit, which will be right up here when you go look at it, or I'll put it up here as well. I hope you've enjoyed all the posts and the content. It's been mostly me, but I hope as we continue doing these more regularly, me, we, I, the royal we, that more people will come and listen and hang out and give more comment on what they like, what they don't like in a constructive manner, what they'd like to see. Also have posted a few things on there about recent Kickstarters for the Cosmere RPG and other ideas for future campaigns, future systems that we could use. Fate, even D&D has several solo RP type systems that you can play with. As a matter of fact, the Cosmere, as of 30 August when I'm recording this, the solo RPG module that they have that's coming with the Kickstarter that I believe is ending any day now will use the Ironsworn-esque rule sets, which is kind of interesting. They will have a solo version of that at some later date, but that has not been determined as of 30 August of 2024. So maybe perhaps in a year or two when you rediscover this and watch it, you'll be like, oh wow, there's a solo RP for the Sanderson verse, if you will, the Sanderson verse. I like Sanders verse, I think. Yeah. Brandon verse. Anyway. So yeah, well, I think we should go ahead and get started. So if you were remembering our previous episodes, episode 17, we had successfully escaped the Colossus. Dr. Osric, Slick, and James were on their way to Zinnia's whatever Zinnia is, right? We found out that Zinnia is currently a hologram projecting themselves onto the bridge of the Wild Deliverance. There was a altercation on their way leaving the Colossus with another ship who's coming to aid the Colossus called the Butterfeld. And through trickery and guile and some, decent piloting, we managed to evade the Butterfeld and the Colossus in the accretion disk of Zinnia, which is the anomaly that is being studied by the folks on Neoma Station and by potential corporate entities that are bankrolling Neoma Station, but also may have an ulterior motive. So I think at this point, James and them have escaped. They're in the accretion disk, and the Colossus and Butterfeld are not giving chase because they are much larger ships, and the accretion disk has debris and matter that is swirling around. Think of it like a gigantic plasma river that is circling a central point, which the anomaly that Zinnia is a black hole, or is what it assumes to be, with some odd characteristics, which is what brought Neoma Station and the corporate entities here for study. I think right now, what we want to do when we begin a session, like we do when we begin most sessions, is we're going to have a session move called a flashback. We're going to have a flashback, or we're going to, I think I want to roll. I'd like it to be a flashback, but I'm going to let this kind of guide us here. I mean, ideally I had it in my head an idea on a flashback, but I'd like to see what comes up here, and we'll set a flag. So when you begin a significant session or chapter of play, do all of the following. So identify or adjust flagged content and set a flag. Okay, we don't need to necessarily do that. Nothing that we have done so far, I think, causes us to have to modify things. There's nothing I would find aberrant. I hope you haven't found anything aberrant either. So we've reviewed or recapped what happened last session. So, you know, James and the crew and Dr. Osric are heading to Zinnia. They're inside the accretion disk. I'd say they're in the inner accretion disk, and the Colossus and Butterfeld, because Zinnia can make some minor modifications to the environment, have increased gravity or done something that would make it so that it's not safe for a larger ship to navigate that area. So we're going to set a scene by envisioning the current situation and intent. So yes, we are making our way to Zinnia. Zinnia has told Dr. Osric and Dr. Manand before Dr. Manand's untimely passing by Zinnia accidentally. As you can see here in our character sheet, we made an iron vow to find Dr. Manand's killer in the short term, but Zinnia inadvertently caused a suit malfunction, attempting to communicate with Dr. Manand, causing her death. And so ideally, we need to convince Zinnia to hand us over some proof, or maybe, you know, with Zinnia's help, find some way to explain the death of Dr. Manand so that James and the Wild Deliverance crew are not suspect number one, or you know, the boss, our ex-boss, is not implicated in some way. So I'm going to go roll. So I've got our 2 die 10 and a die 6. So I'm going to go ahead and roll. We'll see what comes up on the list here. Hopefully it's not a 62. Oh. It is a 92. No, I'm sorry. It is, yes, it is a 92. Unforeseen aid is on the way or within reach. Unforeseen aid. What would that mean? That is a good question. Unforeseen aid. Okay. All right, I have an idea. We're going to play that card in a little bit. I still do want to do a little bit of a vignette of maybe a discussion between the folks on Neoma Station, Achilles, who is the corporate representative who was trying to help Dr. Osric get off the station, but obviously Achilles works for Atwell Industries, which, as we found out, James Atwood and Atwell Industries they have some kind of previous alignment or disalignment in this case. You know, as James previously worked in tech, James is a bit cagey about his past. So at some point that will come up, right? And he rejected a duty or a destiny as previously worked in tech. So if and when we continue this storyline with these characters, we may delve more into that. But right now, Atwell Industries is bankrolling Neoma Station. Achilles is obviously involved. And Atwell is a supra-corporate entity. So they have a private navy, they have ships, they have security, etc. And so it's presumed that Atwell and the Colossus and the Butterfeld and potentially other ships in the area are under control of the Atwell Industries, and they have an ulterior motive. My imagination tells me that the minute the Butterfeld sees James and crew running, because there was some damage to the ship, some kind of issue earlier when James was fighting Petty Officer Johnson, or the petty officer who was trying to help them get their ship's engines back up and running, caused a coolant leak, which caused some damage to the ship. So the ship, James and the crew have made it to the accretion disk. They've made it to the inner accretion disk, as we mentioned previous, which makes the Colossus and Butterfeld hesitant to want to follow them into a black hole, which seems logical because they know it's something. They don't know what it is exactly. And there's definitely a gravitational field here, reminiscent of what we've all grown up to know as a black hole. It's very much a stereotypical black hole. So the Colossus and the Butterfeld break off pursuit, and they are making their way away because they're still not within what, they're still not going to be pulled in by the gravity. And they immediately stop a good safe distance away from the accretion disk, and you can see the Colossus is not 100% because Dr. Osric was able to turn on the fire suppression systems. That probably caused some malfunctions in the area. There was additional damage potentially to electronics and systems and things that we're not aware of. So the Colossus, I imagine Colossus might be listing a little bit, or might be a little off kilter, maybe some gyroscopes for navigation or for stabilization, internal gyroscopes to determine what's up, down, left, right on a ship might have been damaged. Even in space, they might have that. Navigational systems may be damaged, that kind of thing. So they both stop, and the captain of the Colossus and the captain of the Butterfeld, I think that's where our vignette's going to start. We're going to start with a three-way conversation between Achilles, captain of the Butterfeld, and the captain of the Colossus. I imagine the captain of the Colossus, so the Butterfeld is a research vessel. So I would imagine that the Colossus team is working on analyzing the data that they've gotten when the Wild Deliverance went in. They were lightly armored. The Colossus was not, but they weren't under orders to shoot to kill in many cases. Accidents do happen, but it would have been too noisy, right? So you've got the captain of the Colossus, captain of the Butterfeld, and Achilles on a call. And the first thing that happens is Achilles like, do you have them? Do you have them? Have you recaptured them? And I would say the captain of the Colossus is unhappy, right? I would say that there's definitely some words spoken. The captain of the Colossus would be like, hell no, we didn't get them. They hacked our systems and set off our fire suppression systems. We've got malfunctions all over the ship. And you might see, red lights on. You might see smoke potentially. Turning on a fire suppression system when the systems are active, you're going to damage things, right? If you pour water on a server in a server rack, you're going to get some magic smoke. You're going to get some things. It's the idea is you're supposed to kill fires, but there's going to be damage left over, and there's going to be kind of issues. So you might see the captain. I'm imagining like a Zoom three-way thing. You've got Achilles and you've got the captain of the Colossus. There's lights inside, might be some klaxons going off. You see people in the background moving back and forth with clipboards and everything. You see the person on the Butterfeld here. She's, got full power. Everything's working. She's on mute, and you can see her, sending some things around. She's just listening into the conversation. And Achilles says, well, how did you allow them to escape? And the captain of the Colossus says, they hacked our fire suppression system, and we let them go because there was a bunch of confusion going on, and we actually thought that they were here to help us, and then they took off. We didn't realize that they were in better shape than we thought they were. And Captain of the Colossus says the Butterfeld intercepted them, but they took off, and you see the captain of the Butterfield pop to and unmute themselves, and we weren't aware of what was happening. James, the captain of the Wild Deliverance, said that he was making his way back to Neoma Station, and we saw you turning, so we assumed you were making your way back to Neoma Station. You hadn't contacted us to let us know what was going on. Here the Colossus captain's like, that's because our fucking comms were out, okay? You know, we were just trying to, you know, make a break back to capture the Deliverance again. We didn't, you know, we were hoping you would be able to stop them. And Butterfield said, we were coming to help you because you'd sent out a mayday. Obviously, you either didn't hear us respond or you didn't get the message or something like that. We were making our way when we intercepted the Wild Deliverance. The Wild Deliverance told us you were having issues, so we were going to hold until you got closer. But then they just kind of took off all of a sudden. Achilles says, where'd they go? Butterfield says, last position was putting them deep into the accretion disk, and we're not exactly sure if they survived. There's so much interference from the plasma and so much interference from all the debris in the accretion disk that we couldn't tell if they made it or not. And Achilles says, no, I think they made it. I told you, Colossus, that this was a Lumina Aegis event. There's something else going on here. We should assume that they've made it. And both captains look at him as like, it's a black hole. Where's the Lumina Aegis event here? And Achilles says, that's not a black hole. So what I need you to do is bring your ships back and get them repaired. And you're going to make for that black hole. But don't tell anybody on the station you're doing that. How long do you think it'll take for you to get your ship up and running again? And he's looking at the Colossus captain. The captain says, preliminary damage reports is putting us at about 12 hours. He looks at the captain of Butterfield. Can you help effect repairs? And the captain of Butterfield says, we'll give you every damage control team we have. Are you certain that that anomaly is not a black hole? Or I think she would say, are you sure that that's not a black hole, not an anomaly? Because she hasn't been briefed on that yet. Because we've got some sensor data from when we were studying it ourselves. Maybe we could compare data with what we have from Neoma Station. And Achilles says, we'll make all that data available to you, but we need to come to a consensus on what that is and how to leverage it, if at all possible. And so, you know, they end the call. The two ships start limping back to Neoma Station and leaving us with our PCs on the Wild Deliverance. And so before we go back to the Wild Deliverance, I need to put down something in our list here to mark progress. As, you know, I guess the idea is going to be that in 12 hours-ish, the Colossus will be done with repairs and, you know, we'll be pursuing, you know, the ship, the Wild Deliverance into Zinnia's domain, if you will. So, what I want to do is probably go in, let's see which one. So they don't have a D12. I thought about like breaking it up into D12, but they do have a D6. So maybe we can use the D6 bits here. Let me blow that up a little bit. These are nicely done little bits. I'm going to make a screenshot of the D6 here, and I will be able to copy it directly into my chat. So each one of these will denote a 2-hour period of time with which, you know, this will be done. So we can also use our box over here to keep track of certain items in the, you know, moving the progress along. So shrink this down a little bit. We'll put this, you know, right here somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so ideally what we'll do is, you know, every 2 hours, so we'll keep this for like a time counter, you know, and that'll be 12 hours actually instead. So I could actually just put 2 6s. That would also work as well. Put 2 6s here, right one under another. Then I'll shrink this up. What we'll do is, and we could actually have like a milestone or something. So we could, and we'll, so each one of these will be 2 hours. So this will be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So we'll block out the remainder of those. With a, well, doesn't have to be pretty. If I was doing this in a notebook or something, I would just, you know, mark those out with a pen or something. Yeah, so each one of those will represent an hour. You know, what we'll do is, you know, when we hit a threshold for, each one of these will represent a 2-hour threshold. And actually, 4-hour threshold makes more sense. So, you know, because the captain will have some kind of idea at that point whether or not they want to leave at 8 hours or something. And, you know, they were suggested to get more help from the Butterfeld, so there might actually be additional assets that could be happening. Or Neoma Station might have additional assets they may be able to get to. We'll go ahead and cut to James and Dr. Osric and Slick on the Wild Deliverance. So if you remember in episode 17, the Wild Deliverance had a bit of damage because of coolant leak, and there was some damage to the engines and other things. They were still able to maintain flight with, you know, and also there was an issue with primary navigation. So there was James is using the backup navigation. So there's some damage to the ship that will need to be repaired either by Slick or by the AIs or by self-healing systems or what have you. James, and so I'm trying to figure out how I would visualize that. You know, you think of, you know, what the graphic images of an artist depiction of a black hole is to in science, and you see the event horizon and you see everything. I would say even with James's knowledge and with Zinnia there and with Dr. Osric and Slick, there's some palpable fear. I mean, some like real fear that, you know, what if all this is just a hoax, or, you know, I mean, people don't blindly head into, you know, what was they thought of as a black hole only a couple days ago. What does that look like, right? Is that you know, there would be a fear there anyway, almost like a primal fear, like, you know, everybody's afraid of the dark, and, you know, it's just a learned behavior. So, you know, James and the crew are like, you know, the temperature is increasing outside because of the accretion disk. Zinnia says, you know, we're almost there. You know, the pelting of the debris the hull of the ship is, you know, small. You know, they did have a couple larger pieces that hit, so there may be some dents or dings on in the ship, but nothing that's caused any major damage. I want to say this is probably I want to undertake an expedition. The point being that that they are heading into perilous space or hazardous terrain or surveying a mysterious site. So, you know, perhaps I should have done this before we entered the accretion disk, but we were fleeing you know, an enemy or an adversary at the time. So I want to go ahead. I think we want to stay vigilant. Yeah, I think we want to stay vigilant. So we're going to roll wits, which is a 2 on our list here. We got a 2, so we're going to go ahead and roll. Okay, so we have a, wow, we have a, and as one of our watchers did say, a tie goes to the game, goes to the system, not to the player. So it's a weak hit still. We could burn some momentum. You know what, let's, yeah, because, you know, it was, so what we'll do is we'll mark our progress based on, you know, attempts to repair the ship. So, so we have, you know, maybe it took us, let's see, if we burn a bit of momentum here, burn a momentum, we're going to get a strong hit. And it's going to take us, you know, I would say an hour. So we've burned an hour. So while we've been, you know, getting our way back, and to be fair, it's taken, you know, will take them a little while to get to Neoma Station. So it may be 12 hours to effect repairs, but we're assuming that they're doing repairs while they're heading back or while they were leaving. Neoma and the Colossus and Butterfeld will be dealing with that. So let's consider this, and you know, maybe there are automated defense systems or something. You know, maybe there's other hazards that we'll have to deal with once we get to you know, closer to Zinnia's domain. So trying to figure out what that would look like. You know, my brain is, I want to see it like almost like a Dyson sphere that you might have seen on Relics, the episode from Star Trek The Next Generation, where it's just a big, massive Death Star looking thing. I guess the Death Star would be ironic as well, but it would be much smaller, I think. I'm envisioning a almost like a porcupine of spines that come out from this sphere, and the sphere is, you know, fairly large. I'd say it's probably the size of the moon, our moon, you know, in space. Obviously, the phenomena or the anomaly that was making the black hole appeared to be several hundred solar masses, so it would be much larger than the actual brain itself, or whatever it is that Zinnia is, and you know, whatever's causing that. So my thought was that, you know, there's a lot of power here because, one, it's able to create gravity or make gravity such that it's quite intense. Because we don't even understand the technology. I don't even understand the technology, metagaming wise. At some point, Zinnia is going to have to localize the gravitational effect, because obviously the idea is as it gets close, you know, things get closer to the black hole, they get destroyed, right? Zinnia will at some point say, okay, I think you're deep enough into the accretion disk that I can affect the area and not be detected. Perhaps maybe it's on the opposite side of opposite in this case, in space being relative, but it's far enough away. It's like almost the diametric opposite of Neoma Station potentially. So that way, when the changes are made, maybe they don't get noticed by the station. So Zinnia can modify that, so she will all of a sudden you see the accretion disk and the temperature, you get a temperature warning where the temperatures are no longer several thousand degrees Kelvin or what have you. And the rumbling and the impact of debris stops. And James realizes the navigation, the steering controls or stuff are not fighting him as much as before, because there's not as much turbulence. And she says, I've got you. You can let go of that right now. And Arlie, who is the AI for James in previous episodes, bringing up to speed here. Arlie is James's AI and plugged into the ship. Arlie says, Captain, we're being fed coordinates of where we're heading, but something's guiding us. We're not under power right now, which kind of makes sense because Zinnia is able to manipulate gravity locally. So perhaps Zinnia has the capability of having a tractor beam of sorts. According to Arlie, how long do they have? Let's see, how long will it take them to get where the destination is supposed to be? This would also be predicated on the fact that there is a space inside of this large mass. So I'm gonna roll the die 6 and I'm gonna see how long it takes us to get to where we need to be. Now, it could take us quite a while, depending on how far away it is or how long. So I'm gonna see what it takes. Okay, so it'll take us 4 hours. That's not awful. It would, 6 would have probably been a lot, but all right, so we can assume that we've got at least one of these. And I'm going to roll, since we've hit a threshold for the Colossus repairs, and that is also 4 hours of our 6. Let's see how well the repairs have gone from 0 to 100 in terms of completion. So, narratively, and off the side here, the repairs to the Colossus, perhaps they were not as bad as initially thought. And could be that Neoma Station was able to get additional resources involved. So it may not take 12 hours to repair. So we'll see. Right now they're at 86%, which, this may end up coming back to bite me in the ass, but, we'll go with it. Even in Star Trek, Scotty said, you always multiply your times by 3, so that way you look like a friggin' miracle worker. So we're at 86% right now. And it may be that, they get done a lot sooner. So James and them also have to make some repairs. So during their trip to Zinnia, they are finishing their repairs. Let me see. We might have to lose some status or some, we may lose some supplies for repairs. So let's do a repair check. Repair, there we go. Repairs to your vehicles, modules, and mechanical companions or other devices. Envision the situation and roll. If you make your own repairs or direct a companion to make repairs, roll wits, or obtain repairs from someone not an ally, roll supply. Okay. I don't know how you would roll a supply. That's weird. So you'd have to roll what you'd have to roll D6. That's really weird. Yeah. All right. oof, boy, we might end up sacrificing quite a bit here. So on a hit, you gain repair points as appropriate to the situation per the table below. Additionally, you may sacrifice resources and exchange each of -1 of supply or 1 extra repair point. Okay, so clear the battered impact on a vehicle, so 2 points. So we got at least 2 points. We got impacts, broken module. Okay. Take 1 health for mechanical companion, repair any other device, but with a complication or malfunction, pay 2 points. Okay, so we had a malfunction, at least in the reactor systems or the power systems. And so we have 4, I would say 4, 5 points maybe. I would say 5. Let's go 5 because we have some integrity issues from the hull and we've got some battering. So I will say 5 points. We're in the field, so yeah. Okay, so we need to roll wits. So we're going to roll some wits. Okay, so that's a strong hit. We got 4, so we have wits of 6. All right, so we've got a 6. We've got a strong hit. We're in the field, so we got our 3 points of our 5. So I would say we've fixed the navigational malfunction for 2 points. And we've added +1 on the integrity for the vehicle, right? So let me see here. Yeah, battered. So it's interesting. Battered. I've never been a fan of the cursed bit on Iron Sworn. It's like it's not granular enough for me. So okay, so the integrity meter, you know, I got battered and what have you. I should have taken 1 down on the integrity meter here mentioned. So basically, I took a hit, which I should have marked here. A lot of bookkeeping that I've not been keeping track of. So in this case, we have repaired that from the beating that we got from the entering the accretion disk. So I'd say we're back solid on 5 on that. So we still have some additional, you know, minor impacts that would cost us some additional time, but I think it's mostly cosmetic damage at that point. As we're making our way through, we get to know Zinnia a little better. We ask a bunch of questions. James is asking a bunch of questions about, you know, what Zinnia is, because they can see this, you know, it's no moon, it's a space station kind of thing coming at them. Zinnia says that they're unsure of where they came from. They gained sentience several hundred of your years ago, and you know, if years were still a thing. So I don't know how Zinnia would communicate that to us, because it's been what, I mean, if we use years like we do Earth years, which no longer makes sense, it feels like we would need some kind of different method by which to keep track, but it's several hundred of our equivalent years in the forge. If it's, you know, anniversary of our coming here. So if it's 50 of those, then it would be 50, you know, 50 seasons or 50 somethings. But they've been sentient longer than humans have been in the forge. It's what it amounts to. They found out about us because of the station, because of ships that would meander through, and Zinnia was able to poke, if you will, or access certain parts of databases or what have you to find out what we were about. And even though our history shows that we were very warlike, Zinnia sympathized with our need to escape our previous solar system, our previous home, to come to the forge, and had also been studying how humanity got to the forge and in what mechanism. So James is going to gather some information. I think he's going to ask another question about what did you find? When did you discover anything about that connection? So yeah, we're gonna roll. Man, we're just rolling wits all left and right here, aren't we? So let's go see. Oh, okay. So we got an 8. So that's a weak hit. All right. So information provides insight and envisioned what you discover. All right. So we get another point of momentum. We get our momentum back, and so. Zinnia tells them that the technology that brought humanity to the forge, the probe that was used to... Okay, how did we get here? Mysterious alien gate. Okay, so the alien gate, or whatever it is that we found in our solar system that brought us here, appears to be very similar technology to what Zinnia runs on. So it'd be like a similar chassis, or the architectural style of the structure that Zinnia lives in shows a lot of very similar designs. We know that it is very... So while we have our own AIs, this is beyond what we know in this case. The reason, and this is the complication, I think. The reason that Zinnia had reached out to Dr. Manand was that Zinnia had been monitoring communications in and around, what we thought was the black hole, or the anomaly that is Zinnia, had intercepted communications from somebody on Neoma Station named Achilles, which James says, I know that person. He works for Atwell Industries. Zinnia says, yes, he does. And at least a half a dozen other ships that are in the sector studying the black hole, with the idea that, if they could figure out how to harness the capabilities of the black hole, then it could be used for, transportation. It could, especially since, the discovery of Sigma Ray from Dr. Manand, that perhaps there was more to the black hole. We could turn it into a way to travel instantaneously anywhere. That was the theory that was still holding. But there had to be a secure way of doing it without, ripping us to shreds. And Dr. Manand's death put a kink in that, because the company was leveraging Dr. Osric's and Dr. Manand's research, and they got too close. So Dr. Osric is listening to this, and he said, I didn't trust Achilles because I wasn't a fan of the corporate policies, but I didn't think that they would actually try to take our research away from us and get rid of us. I can't believe that would happen. James, of course, the other complication is James says, yes, I know well Atwood Industries and what they can do. I used to work for them. And that would be something I think that James would be okay telling everybody on the ship. James says, how do you expect us to get out of this? What are you expecting us to do by bringing us to you? And I think that's the question, isn't it? What is Zinnia's motivation for bringing them to Zinnia? Okay, that was episode 18 of Lumen Aegis. It's coming down to it. I'm trying to figure out where we're going to head with this. As you'll see in the next episode, we run into a few bumps. Hope you're enjoying. Hope you have feedback of a constructive nature, or hey, here's how I do it with my Ironsworn campaigns. That would be great. Feel free to pop that on our Reddit, which I'll put up here, one of these two spots. Tell me how you do your goals or what have you. Hope you have a good day. Take care of yourselves. If you do have some thoughts on how you do Iron Vows without it just being you making a promise on a little piece of metal or something, please join our Reddit and tell me what works for you thematically, or how you explain it away in your own games. Maybe your players have thought of something as well. So take care, be kind, like, subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe, ding the bell down here so that you can be made aware of when things are coming up. And I will talk to you very soon. Thank y'all. Have a good day. Bye.